On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
We think this as young guys, I'm sure you can relate. So how do we defeat that, or how do we overcome that? What do we do inside ourselves when we're making that decision to not be that egotistical is really what it is.
So what it is you've got to understand that you can make money in any kind of economy. Yeah. And because we're already starting to see a recession now, you just have to learn to shift your business at the right time.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. Today, I've got Sean Rudner here on the King stage. My brother, how are you?
Thank you. Welcome. I appreciate the invite.
Of course. We wouldn't be, what did you say off air? We wouldn't be putting out a ridiculous amount of content if we didn't have amazing people like you on the stage every day, sometimes multiple times a day.
Thank you.
My calendar is full, as you mentioned, but I'm just so thankful that you're here, man. Tell us what kind of business that you have. Let's get into it.
So, our business is broken up into 3 different factors, but it's all based on packaging of products. We supply substrate. 45% of our business is substrates to different printers and laminators that will eventually turn it into plastic bags, pouches. Wow. And then another 45% of our business is basically custom packaging products. And then another 10% is our e-commerce that basically helps compete for and helps the mom and pops out there on some stock packaging.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, we should probably chat off air. I've got a local, he's a farmer really is what he is, but they have a pumpkin patch, for lack of better terms. Mm-hmm. He makes these apple cider donuts and pumpkin spice donuts that are incredible. And I'm like, Jim, are you selling these online? He's like, no, we just sell a ton of them right here from the pumpkin patch. I'm like, okay, we got to figure out a packaging, and we're selling these to somebody somewhere, because I'll go there. Look, I cannot wait for the fall to sign up my kids for the pumpkin patch in a membership so that I can go get some donuts.
We might do some trading out. I might do some packaging for some donuts. That sounds actually really good. So
yeah, pretty incredible. Okay, so Sean, we talked a little bit off air. We were kind of getting to know each other, and we talked about, people have these whys, why they're doing things. We talked about kids. Tell the listeners at this level, you've been successful. You've been successful for a good minute. I guess my reason why I'm saying that is because you choose to do this every day. Why? Why are you still doing it? Why are you building? Why are you pushing?
So for us, my goal has been since my kids were young is how do I fund my next 4 generations? It's pretty interesting. And what does that actually look like? So that's always a difficult thing is, what does funding them mean for 4 generations, and what do they get out of that whole situation? But that's my why.
Yeah. So you told me that a few minutes ago when we were chatting. And of course, my initial reaction, just like with most people, is like, wow, that's a great idea. And we live in this idea stage for a long time of like, I'm sure the listener heard you say, fund the next 4 generations. And they thought, holy moly, wow, that is big. And then then there it goes out of our mind and we never think about it again. But you talked about sitting down with financial advisors, figuring out what that actual number looks like. What does funding mean? What are we participating in? What is that number added up 4 generations? Like you are putting this in a plan.
Oh yeah. There's lawyers, financial advisors, accountants, we are getting advice from all the people that are professionals in that aspect. And they're giving us good direction on what we have to do to get to that point. Now I just got to
How did you come up with 4? Why are you so passionate about this? Where did this come from?
So the thing is you've looked at some of these successful families that are out there. And, the way I look at it is that 4th generation, I'll probably be long gone by the time that 4th generation happens. Yep. So what the goal would be is that, hopefully my kids take on that next step and saying, okay, we want to do the next 4 generations. so that it just keeps growing from that standpoint, so that there becomes a long lineage of our family that has done some pretty amazing things. And that doesn't mean that we're all hoarding this money. That, obviously there's going to be a portion that's going to be going out for philanthropy, but
Yeah.
the thing is I look at it as my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids, if they wake up and they're not worried about money, that means that they can actually go out and make a difference in the world, where money, that factor doesn't become part of their decision-making process. It
Right.
just says, okay, the world's my oyster. What do I want to go do with it? If I want to go cure cancer, I can go do that and not have to worry about me getting paid as a researcher so little money.
Yeah. I want to, excuse me, I want to press into this conversation here just a little bit, because it's such a unique conversation. I think everybody relates to it, or at least thought about it a little bit, if they're a high performing father, at least. I know for sure, just because I've had conversations like this with so many, but not too many people have thought about it in detail like this. That's why I want to kind of press in a little bit. The moments that you've thought about removing the stress, if you will, of going and earning, and then that stealing or taking away creativity or next level potential, how do you balance this idea of, removing that hardship, if you will, or that struggle or that earningness, and still instill into them that even though they don't have to fight for maybe the daily food, to still go out and try to achieve their absolute potential? Like, how have you balanced that with your own kids?
So we put in some things where, like at an early age, we started them off that the school is their job. Everything is always a job. School is their job. Their spare time, they have to play a sport. It's the old idle hands. So you're starting to create a work ethic at a very early age. I mean, it's funny because both my kids would have their homework done before I even got home from work. The first thing that they would do when they got home from school, finish their homework, then go on to whatever sports practice that they had. And then by, dinner time, they had everything done, and now they can go screw around. And they knew that the easiest way to keep dad off their back is get these things done. And so I think that that's just going to carry on over through, you start that at a very early age, it's just going to carry on over to future generations. They're going to say, that worked for me, I might as well do it for my kids.
Yeah. I mean, I love the intentionality, whether it's the order of doing homework first or whatnot. That's how I was raised as well. So I would agree with that, but it's not so much necessarily those things. What you're saying is develop work ethic, put them in situations to be able to make decisions. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. It's not so much giving them advice. It's more of a, how do I build this person up? And so at some point, even at a young person, and then eventually a young adult, they can make their own choices, and they're good choices too, right?
Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about making decisions, I mean, I'm trying to arrive them to make, I don't give them advice. I try to ask questions that'll force them to think and arrive at a decision that's probably what's best for them at that point in time. Like we talked about, at times, I'll give direct advice. But most of the time I try to ask the questions that'll get them to think and make a decision.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've centered this entire podcast really around, good decision, bad decision making, because that's what we do as entrepreneurs. Like, if I'm trying to get my children to make good decisions, I'm trying to help them be productive, trying to help them leap over certain things and maybe not have to make certain bad decisions because they've learned from somebody like you or from somebody like me. And that's what the entrepreneur journey is all about. So let's parlay right into your good decision. You can think back. I'm going to take you back to like maybe an early stage in the business, maybe sub, 3 years, maybe first million or two. And I want to know something that you just did that was just, such a clear, good decision that we can learn from.
I think that with my background, I've always tried to make sure that I'm involved in the sales process, no matter whether it's my customer or one of our salespeople's customers, and actually listening to the customer and start to understand what their needs are, and then try to figure out, it's basically coming up with a process of saying, how do I create value for this person?
Yeah.
And it's amazing that if you just ask the right questions, customers will tell you everything you need to know on how to run your business. They're usually not very shy about that when you ask the right questions.
That's right.
And so then you just take that into effect. Maybe I'm going off into a little tangent of what you're asking that question, but it was just learning that process of asking the right questions and trying to figure out how to create value and differentiate yourself from your competition.
Yeah. You've given us several things here. I want to try to go into a couple holes. Number one, you're talking about getting feedback. Obviously, your team and clients, you'd probably agree with both on that they're willing to give opinions, but how did you go about collecting the opinions? Give us some practicals there.
I'm not really understanding what your question is. I mean, were you talking about it's usually just face-to-face and asking.
Yep.
I mean,
Face-to-face surveys. I mean,
we don't do surveys. To me, the thing is that you can't read body language off of a survey. You can't get emotional inflection off of a survey. Now, the type of sales that we do is we're always B2B. So it's a little bit of a different game. I gotta imagine a B2C, a survey would be incredibly effective.
Right.
But in a B2B scenario, especially with something that's a consumable like what we sell, you're always seeing the same customer. I'm not unemployed from contract to contract. We're actually just always seeing business. So for us, we get in front of the customers. How do we have the conversations and what are their needs? I mean, that's really, and that's what most of my calls are about almost every day now. It's just sitting on video or face-to-face calls.
Yeah, the relationship is what you're talking about in a reoccurring business. And so for a listener who's got an agency or, a packaging or something where they've got a client and they're working with this client for potentially years, the mistake that probably some people have made is that you just sign them up, you start doing the work, and then you forget about them, right? And then eventually their needs change or something gets mixed up. There's no relationship there. So they kind of just quickly shift and move to somebody else who's maybe a little cheaper or maybe faster or whatever. They're willing to jump for those things because there's no relationship. So I hear you saying relationship, but inside of that, it's not just trust and like stickiness of like keeping them to you, but also it's like legitimately as they grow as a business, you're in tune with what they need and you're able to adjust. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah. So it's funny with our business, we actually look at new channels in a couple of different areas every 6 months. So we're trying to launch a new channel of products that we don't supply already. And so what we're always doing is asking our customers, what are the demands? I mean, we were just on a call with a major customer this morning, and they were like, Sean, we would love for you to start stocking this product here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Sign me up. Let's do it. And it's just common sense that you actually listen, but you would be amazed at how many companies would say, oh, well, that's going to turn into too much work or listen, I'm looking at the lifetime value of that customer in our industry. That's really what we're always constant. And plus it's a good relationship. So that's what you want in the end is that you have that free flow. I mean, I think salespeople have a tendency to go off on a tangent and they try to be too salesy. You're in a business transaction. Don't be a salesperson, be a business person and work out a business transaction. So
we inside of our little umbrella of companies, we have a company called Transcend Transaction. And this whole idea of it doesn't have to be just in and out. And what you're talking about, most salespeople are about the deal, they're about the commission. It's a one and done scenario. But there's so many businesses, even if the sales process is set up to where it's a one and done commission opportunity for the salesperson, then the business is facilitating the relationship or what we call the customer journey and this experience that if you can just differentiate yourself, like you said 3 minutes ago, if you can figure out a way inside of that experience to differentiate yourself from your competitors, there is no need for your people to look anywhere else.
Exactly. I mean, and that, what you want to do is just make it a real relationship with the customer and the customer. I mean, we have a huge retention rate on our films and our custom products. Now, the e-commerce portion, that's a come and go, based on the type of clientele it is. But 90% of our business, we have like over a 95% retention rate on our customer base.
Yeah. I want to throw a challenge question out to you because obviously we've got plenty of those people listening here today that are contract to contract, like you said earlier.
Yep.
And so taking your business model, obviously very different from contract to contract, but how do you take the principles that you're talking about that have led to success in a reoccurring model? How do you infuse those things into a contract to contract business? What would your thoughts be on that?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to what the dollar amount is of your sale. I think that's a big important thing. I mean, if you're selling, cell phones for a living at $200 or $300, you really can't spend a whole lot of time dealing with that. But if you're talking about, so it was funny, in 2004, I had sold a business and I had a 4-year non-compete in the packaging industry.
Wow.
And so I got into real estate brokerage, I mean, like a lot of people did. And what I did was, in that particular case is I was like, okay, I moved to Colorado Springs at that point in time from Arizona, had no idea. I knew 2 people in the whole state, really. I was just like, Colorado's cool. And I'm like, how do I go out and start selling houses for a living?
Yeah.
And I went from 0 people to being KW's Rookie of the Year. And I was doing 10 to 15 houses a month. And what I did was I kind of niched myself out for investor clients.
Sure. Yep.
And really just started networking in that situation so I could find a way to get repeat business.
Yeah.
And make contract to contract. It's the same mentality. You're working with someone and developing that value structure for that particular person.
Yeah.
And you'll get referrals like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The referral piece is based, however long the transaction, you're looking for the referral. I'll say one other thing too, that you just said it. I want to say it in a slightly different way because it happened just a couple of days ago. We had our November roundtable with our mastermind group, and there's a pretty large HVAC contractor. He sells units. He's a nationwide type of a business, and he said that he was talking to an excavator who's taken on a couple $1 million projects, singular projects. And has grown rapidly. And his response to that was cool, like great. Keep like those were based on relationship with some GCs and all kinds of really good stuff that we've been talking about here. But his encouragement was you got to figure out a way to get reoccurring business because sometimes things fluctuate in a recession or in a housing market up or down and things just get bottled up. And if you're going project to project or contract to contract, in your point here, if you can figure out a service or if you can figure out a reoccurring thing that you're adding value to the same customer just over a period of time, it creates not only stickiness, but it creates a recession proof, kind of another lane for your business.
Yeah. Recession resilient. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anybody was in real estate in 2008, 2009, they know, I mean, it was a painful time. So
yeah, just stop.
Yeah. And the funny thing is lucky for us, we started up a property management company in 2007. So it allowed us to actually build up a clientele and have some stickiness and some consistent revenue. And actually, we sold that business to start this business when my non-compete ended. So it was kind of one of those, thank God it came along and we did it,
That's incredible. All right, let's flip to the other side, Sean. I want to know a bad decision, something maybe a little bit embarrassing. What can you share with us?
I can tell you this, that bad decision. I didn't listen to people in real estate that had been around that business for a long time. They all warned me what it was all about. I was very inventory heavy at that point in time for my own properties.
Yeah.
And was in an over leveraged position. So I would say the bad decision is not listening to people that said, I've been through this 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And thinking that you're smarter than everybody else is, and that was probably the biggest eye opener of my lifetime. So yeah, I would say that was probably the worst decision I've had.
Okay, so I think we can all kind of piece together what you're talking about. Real estate, you mentioned the time frame. Okay, fine, got it. How does the listener today, because we all do this, we all hear the guy like you right now saying, I made the mistake, don't do it. I've been here 2 or 3 times before, just like you heard back then. And what we think in our brain is, oh, he's just being negative, or, oh, he's being conservative, or, oh, he's old, or whatever our thoughts are,
Yeah.
Like we think this as young guys, I'm sure you can relate. So how do we defeat that? Or how do we overcome that? What do we do inside ourselves when we're making that decision to not be that egotistical is really what it is.
So what it is you've got to understand that you can make money in any kind of economy. Yeah, and so just because the economy is starting, because we're already starting to see a recession now. Some people call it we're in a recession. Some people say that, it depends on which side of the tracks you live on. So, but that being said, you can make money in any kind of economy that's out there.
Right.
You just have to learn to shift your business at the right time.
Yeah.
And this is where you've always preached on every podcast that I've listened to. Make sure you're finding good mentors, finding good, mastermind groups.
Yeah.
Someone has been through this exact same scenario in the past. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. That is really just listen to someone that's done it. Maybe you can tweak it a little bit for the current circumstances or for your current personality. But there are been plenty of smart people that have lived before me, and there's going to be plenty of smart people that live after I've lived. So you got to kind of go into this thing a little humbly and listen to what other people have to say. Doesn't mean you have to use that as gospel, but make it part of your decision-making process.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I not only agree with you, but you were just saying something that made me think in a probably a lane that I've never thought in before, but this legacy stuff that we were talking about at the beginning, the serving 4 generations and how big that is.
Yeah.
To think that there's going to be systems and processes in place for literal my relatives that I don't even ever meet, right? That is beyond most, right? And so I think that the same thing that you just said is like, if we can remove ourselves far enough away to know that we're not only that we're mortal, but that we're finite, like it's going to come to an end.
Yeah.
It's going to be there, like it's not going to live forever, at least not in this frame, And so the way that we can take ourselves to that place of mindset is like, okay, well, if it is going to end, if there has been people hundreds and hundreds of years before me who have been smart, innovative, solving problems, and there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of more over the years, then who am I? Right. It makes you really, really small. If you go big, it makes you really small and you go, okay, maybe I do have something to learn here. And I think it puts you in a perspective of, okay, so like, I'm really only this tiny little piece in this really big plan. Did you add anything?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's funny because people sit down and you take a guy like John D. Rockefeller, who was the richest guy back in that point in time and would be considered, if you took it into today's dollars,
right,
probably the richest guy right now. I mean, Elon Musk or Bezos might be competing with that, but he's in that conversation at that point in time. And he's dealing with a completely different set of problems that, we don't have here at this time. And, you never know how they would have done in this circumstance. But that was a prime example of, he might not be the perfect person to model yourself after from a personality standpoint. But for me, he had a great business and he funded, I don't know, 7 generations, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I like that. So that was kind of the thought process that I had behind it.
Love it. We've been talking about process. We've been talking about decision making. A decision comes across your desk today. What steps do you follow to make a good decision?
So every decision I start off with is I've got a sign right above my computer that has all my core values of the company and definitions of those core values. So we start off with that filtering process. So if it hits the whole filter on that process, then I can move on to actually making a real, get into the financial part of it or the business modeling part of that whole situation. If it doesn't, then you can it's an easy decision, get out. It's funny how there's no shortage of opportunities that are thrown at you if you network properly. So you just got to start to learn to say no if it just doesn't fit what you're looking for right off the bat. So if it's close enough, you can negotiate it. But outside of that, I use a filtering process on that. And then the next step is business modeling.
Yeah, that's good stuff. We're going to flip over to the speed round. My first question to you is about tracking. Same vein here, maybe a little different style though. If you could only pick one KPI, one thing to track forever and ever in the packaging world, what would it be?
The package. So, I would have cheated and said P&L beforehand, but I think I'm getting to the point with our business that actually my balance sheet is probably more important than my P&L at this point in time. Yeah. So I would say right now it's the balance sheet. I know that's a big KPI, but
it is. I was going to say, what are you looking for on that for you when you take a glance? I mean, obviously there's certain tactics when you take a glance at a P&L, it looks a little different with a balance sheet. What are the 2 or 3 things that are hot buttons for you?
So I'm looking at debt to equity ratios. I'm looking at our equity and what our equity build has been over the, each month after month after month. We don't take a whole lot of money out of our business. And then I'm also looking at my total inventory number, because we're an inventory intense business. So we keep millions of dollars of inventory on the floor at all points in time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Any small tweak on that in the wrong direction, like most people with their P&L, if they can't manage a number on there, it can go wrong pretty quickly. Very good.
Absolutely.
What book would you recommend, Sean, for a business owner trying to scale, trying to build their business?
So it was funny because listening to your podcast before, I put a lot of thought into this. If I was going from 6 figures to 7 figures, I'd probably call it E-Myth Revisited. I thought that was a very good book. Yep. I think it gets you into some basics there. Yep. Then I think from going from 7 figures to the 8 figures that we're at right now, I would say Good to Great or Built to Last, both by the same author, obviously, are phenomenal books for taking it to the next level. At that point in time.
Yeah. And Good to Great is one of those books where I think everybody knows how to quote a few, 2 or 3 things out of it. But when you have the opportunities later, I think once you have a team, once you have some key roles in your team, you start understanding really what the lever points are. And that's a phenomenal recommendation for that level. You're right. You mentioned it earlier, my question around intentionally masterminding or networking. What are your thoughts? What have you done in your history?
So historically, I used to be part of Vistage. And that was when I was in California. When we moved here, we got out of that. Now it's actually, I spend a lot of time just networking with other business owners, more of creating friendships. It's, as you find, it's amazing on how other business owners just, they need someone to talk to. You need, so I wouldn't say I dump a ton of money into that, because it's traveling back and forth to meet and hang out with friends, but they're friends in the same business. So that's what it is.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny that you say that, because I hosted our first, so we've got a group for 6-figure business owners, and that's much more teaching, coaching, as you can imagine. They're just trying to get the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
And in our 7 and 8 figure group, I had our very first event. I had this whole agenda and structure, and it was great. It worked out fine. But what I came to learn was that they just wanted to, hey, look, I just want to step away for a minute and be around some other high level people and just be. There doesn't have to be an agenda. Like, we can just sit here, talk about business, talk about family, maybe even like just look out the window and see the beach, or we're going to have everybody over to the house here in a few weeks. We're going to play some bags and go to a Chiefs game. Like, sometimes it's just that. It's not just fun, having fun. It's like being around other high level people doing normal things.
Well, and the thing that I think, like, what makes like your business different, you own businesses. A lot of the other mastermind groups,
sure,
the person that's leading it might not have a history of owning businesses. And so I think that's also an important thing that someone's got to sit down and listen to. Is going, I've been there, I've done that, I know what I'm talking about in these areas, and we can have a good conversation. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Is it's amazing how that path just, you don't know which rabbit hole you're going to go down when you're just sitting around with a bunch of people and just talking. You know, so.
That's so good. It's actually refreshing is what it is, because I think many entrepreneurs feel that way. They don't know that how they can express it. And I'm not necessarily saying sign up for a mastermind. I'm talking about what you're talking. Just intentionally connect. Just get some lunch with somebody. You ain't got no money for a mastermind group? Fine.
Yeah.
Go have some lunch with another guy and ask him what's working, what's not working. He's going to ask you what's working, what's not working. And then that eventually grows. But it's about the relationship. Sometimes it's just about the camaraderie, right?
That's what it's all about. It's amazing what deals pop up 10 years later that you're just all of a sudden, hey, I was hanging out with this guy 10 years ago, and now all of a sudden we're doing a deal together. And it might have taken 10 years to get around to it, but it's an awesome deal. So
yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Okay, I got one last question here for you, Sean.
Yeah.
I want to know, if you had the chance to whisper in the younger Sean's ear, what would you say?
This one's throwing me for a loop here.
I told you I'd throw you through.
Yeah. This one's probably, I don't know. I mean, I try to live life without a whole lot of regret.
Sure.
I would say probably I should have started on my self-improvement through reading and networking and all that stuff earlier in my life. When you're an entrepreneur at a younger age, it's amazing how you think you know everything. And then when you turn 35, 40 years old, then you start to figure out what you don't know. And then when you turn 60 again, then you kind of get crabby and then you think you know everything again. So it's kind of one of those deals. So, but yeah, that's the approach I would say is probably should have started on opening up my circle of people that could give me knowledge at an earlier age.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to humility. We've talked about that quite a bit in this podcast, ego versus humility. And I think I mean, gosh, you got to have a certain healthy confidence level, ego, call it whatever you want, in order to build a business like you have. But it's also not sustainable if you don't have the other counterpart to that, the ability to see where you need to grow and how other people can be better than you even in certain areas of the business, and being able to lean on people. You can't do that if you have a big ego.
Yeah, I love people that are better than me. I mean, now it just gives you something to strive for. I mean, you know, I grew up wrestling, so there was always someone that was going to knock you down. You know, I mean, so you're always trying to look for that type of mentality. Who's going to be better than me, so I can have someone in my crosshairs.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. Okay, how can the listener find you? Obviously, I'm sure people across the country who potentially could even use your service, but how can they find you as an entrepreneur as well?
I would say that I'm not really big on other social media outlets. I'd say LinkedIn is probably my number one thing. So you can go on to Sean Rudner at LinkedIn, you know, find me on LinkedIn, and I'm out of Omaha, Nebraska. I think there's another Sean Rudner in Georgia or something like that. I don't know. But
he's not the real one.
Yeah, he's not the real one. That's yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. So that's how you find me.
Perfect. Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well, just to make it super easy for them. Sean, thank you so much for being here. Just insight into an industry, into a family. I mean, 4 generations. I'm walking away going, okay, I've thought about this. I've become obsessed with this idea. You've taken it to another level. I got some work to do. So thank you for giving that to me. You gave it to my listeners. We appreciate you. Blessings on your family, your business.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing literally over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings literally exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.